Welcome to Hair of the Werewolf. I'm Chase, and I'm here with my co-host, Lily.
Hey, guys.
And we are a supernatural horror podcast that aims to explore the world of fear, often with a drink or two to make it more fun. Because if you're like us, scary stories help us forget the stresses of the week. For those of you who missed last week's episode, we released the official Hair of the Werewolf cocktail for the summer. I hope some of you gave it a shot, and if you missed it, make sure to go back and listen to it. We gave the recipe and everything, and we also put the recipe on our social media. It's a really good tiki drink. It's like a grapefruit rum cocktail, and
some beer.
And we can't make a cocktail without
splash of beer.
Yeah. So, on that note, what are you actually drinking today? Because we had the cocktail last week. What are you drinking today?
We did. Today, I kind of kept it simple. So, I'm having gin with soda, specifically Squirt, which is a grapefruit based soda.
I told her it'd be a good mix, and then she pours it, and then she takes a sip, and she just looks at me like she just sipped poop.
Well, also, I don't know how big of a fan I am of the gin that you bought as well, so that might have been a mix of it. Everything's working against me.
She hates all my gin, so I'm never going to win with that. Yeah, so one little announcement. Our friend Joe sent us a link to a new horror documentary that gets released this month. It should appeal to most of you, and it's going to especially appeal to you if you're a Conjuring fan. So it's called The Sleepless Unrest. It documents 4 people who stay for 2 weeks in the actual Conjuring house. Obviously the one in movies was fake. It was like a huge
set.
house. Yeah.
Yeah.
But this one, it's a little more modest and realistic looking. So 4 people actually stay in it for 2 weeks. The 4 people are the 2 directors, Kendall Welpton and Vera Welpton. I wonder if they have the same last name. So I didn't look into them. I don't know if they're if they're family or married or something. Yeah. And they're doing it with 2 paranormal investigators, Richard Stratton and Brian Murray. They claim to have attempted to document any paranormal activity that occurred during their stay. There is a trailer on YouTube, and it definitely tries to turn up the fear to 11. It's kind of ridiculous. But I'm betting it's going to feel more like just ghost hunter shows that we've watched. It's a little over the top.
They're probably going to have the same kind of equipment, or if it's a true investigation. If not, if they're just sitting there being like, oh, let's see if something happens, which I highly doubt. I think they're gonna do the whole ordeal, and
everything's gonna be done to make it seem scarier than it may or may not have actually been.
Yeah.
But either way, I think it looks fun. We're probably gonna watch it. It's supposed to be released to video on demand. I'm not sure what site specifically, but on July 16th, so just 2 weeks away. So that could be fun for all of you Conjuring fans and real world paranormal investigation fans. Yeah, so that's the big one. So thanks to Joe for sending us that link, because I hadn't even heard of it.
Yeah, me either. I really want to check it out when that comes out. Yeah, so it's been a pretty hectic week.
It's been a super hectic week.
Also, if you guys hear anything in the background, I apologize. So our neighbors are having a party or something.
And it's kind of on and off raining, and it's windy. And the car's been bad, but we did everything we could to soundproof it. I think it'll be fine.
It should be fine.
But if you hear stuff in the background, I apologize.
There's nothing we can do about that. These are out of our hands elements kind of thing. So, But anyway, the material should still be the same and fun, so we'll all have a good time. I promise.
Yeah, and if you're having a drink, it's going to get funner as we get along.
Funner.
I want to keep, throwing out news.
Well, we have some things that happened. Okay, so I'd like to start out that at the beginning of the week, or rather, last weekend, our friend Lisa finally really moved into her house and everything. And Chase is convinced that it might be haunted. But aside from that, Chase thinks all new houses are haunted because he's always in this fear that maybe something will, emerge from the depths and you're totally screwed. It's one of his fears. Totally understandable.
Yeah.
And then the other thing is that something weird did happen. Do you want to tell that part of the story?
Oh, yeah. So we get this weird text image from Lisa, and she says, do any of you guys know what this says? It was a bunch of Asian characters. I couldn't tell if it was Chinese or Japanese because a lot of them are the same characters written in the mirror, but it only showed.
So the fog. Or
it had the mirror had to be foggy for the letter to show up. Someone put their oils from their finger when they wrote it out. And they were kind of weirded out about it, and I was like, I don't know what that means, but they did find out. All it said was Happy New Year. Happy
New Year, which is so weird. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, and Unless it's just been sitting there for a really long time, because no one had lived in that house for a while, right? I think like the original owners had like moved out or something years prior.
Yeah.
I'm not sure on the story, but anyway, I thought that was pretty creepy.
Well, and our friend Cayman was staying over there because Lisa had to leave to head back to car to get more stuff in her car, and Cayman was staying there overnight. And he even called us. He's like, I wonder if it's haunted. And the next morning, we're like, you dead?
I was like, hey, are you still alive?
And he's like, yeah, the house is fine. He's like, there's nothing to be scared of.
Yeah. So
I'm like, okay, cool.
He's okay. And then also later in the week, I think this was like on Wednesday or maybe Tuesday, we received a weird letter with a bunch of old photographs that did not belong to us.
So we got a letter with no return address. And calling it a letter is weird. We got an envelope.
Right.
But there was no letter inside. With no return address. However, the post office, they have to stamp, point of origin to confirm. And that came from New York. Mm-hmm. But anyway, so it was addressed to our address with no name, just to this address. So since there was no name, I was totally within my bounds to open it, which I did.
Well, yeah. I mean, it was to our address. And we're the current residents.
And I thought it was weird. And I opened it up. And inside it's a piece of cardboard to like keep the envelope firm, like to hold its structure. And then there's a tiny older envelope inside, which I pull out, and within it is a pile of ancient photographs.
They're so old.
The most recent one, you can tell it's the most recent one, and it's also the only one with a date, is 1973.
And these are pictures of people, by the way, people we don't know, or like even look like us. Well, not me. I mean, they're all white people, so I don't know.
It's the only color photograph. All the other ones are black and white. Some of them look World War II or earlier.
Yeah.
So it's a bunch of old photographs. Absolutely bizarre. And then in addition to the photographs were this little pile of return address stickers. The kind that people print out. We use them too, and you just put them on the top of your letter. And they were all, it was like an unused set of them. The name on the return address was C, letter C, letter V, Wicker. And
Wicker, that's right.
I did an online search, and all I could find, and I don't even know if it's accurate or the right one, was there was someone named Cecil Vivian Wicker who apparently, wrote some books and published them through the UNM press in the 50s and 60s, and was born in 1895. I have no other information that it may not be the same person, but it was really weird.
That would be the connection. Who knows?
And the return address, it had that name, C.V. Wicker, and our actual current address. So, that's how they knew where to send it, I assume. Yeah,
and I think our friend Andrew, the one who we were on their podcast not too long ago.
Dead Letter Movies.
He had a good suggestion. It was probably like an estate sale, or they were cleaning out an estate, and maybe they found these photographs, saw the address along with it,
just returned it,
and were like, let's just get rid of it.
Yeah,
which makes sense. Yeah, it was just out of the blue. It was super creepy.
Yeah, so I'm looking into it. I've contacted a lot of different friends who might have different leads. We're gonna see if we can find out, and hope it's not a nefarious trail that we have to follow.
Oh my god. I doubt it. I'm sure.
How often does this stuff happen, in movies? But it's always bad in movies.
So far we haven't been cursed, as far as I know.
I'm not worried about that. But I don't want to find out we're looking for some sort of serial killer and something crazy like that, and that our house was a former place where people were murdered or something.
Well, that maybe could have happened. Who knows?
Maybe, who knows? So I guess there was
a few weird
things that happened today, or in this last week.
The week, yeah, it was entertaining.
But it looks like Lily has a giant pile of papers for today.
You always say that. Actually, this time it really is a long one.
Yeah. So last week, if you guys got sick and tired of listening to me jibber jab all episode, it's probably not going to happen this time. So Lily's in control.
Yeah, you're going to hear me talk and stutter this entire time. So Perfect. Get ready. So my story actually was inspired by the fact that our friend Cayman, the one we were talking about, who saw the Chinese inscriptions on the mirror wall when he took a shower. He's going to New Orleans very soon. And I thought, hey, I should do a story in that location and see what I can find. And I found the story I thought I was covering the last time. Do you remember when I started researching on a plantation, Myrtle's plantation?
Absolutely.
And then at first I thought it was another place and I was confused. Mm-hmm. So this is it.
Oh.
Yeah, so I was totally off. But that's okay. I mean, it's in the South.
You got there eventually.
That's
all that matters.
So this is called the LaLaurie Mansion. And like I said, it's in New Orleans.
Wait, can you spell LaLaurie?
LaLaurie. It's
LA space LOR
LAURIE, but except it's one word, so it's LaLaurie.
That's weird.
Yeah, it's not the easy or like the most fun word to say.
It's just gonna sound like. So is that what you meant when you said stuttering?
No.
I was like, because it's gonna sound like you're stuttering. LaLaurie.
No, I just meant like I stutter by nature, but
Okay,
that also is not going to be helpful. So here we go.
Get self-conscious. Let's make this.
Let's do this on a good note. Okay. This is also my first disclaimer. There is a small portion of my story that I will be discussing, and it has some very, very violent and sad subject matter. I will put in the episode description when I will be talking about this stuff. So if you want to skip it, you'll know when to do that, especially if you're listening to it.
You mean like the timestamp? The
timestamp, right. And, in case, one, you don't want to listen to it, or two, you have kids with you. And also, as I'm talking, I will give a warning, be like, pause now.
I appreciate that you're not giving me the opportunity to skip it.
No, you have to listen.
Because knowing me, I would. Really depressing stuff messes with my head.
Yeah, totally. So with that said, this story begins with Delphine LaLaurie. Her birth name was actually Marie Delphine McCarty or McCarthy, and she was born on March 19th, 1787. It wasn't until her third marriage that she would be most famously known as Madame LaLaurie. And she is most infamously known as being one of the first women serial killers.
Oh, great.
Yeah, so it's kind of a true crime episode as well, so watch out. So I am going to say, if you're from the U.S., you might already know that New Orleans is probably one of the most haunted cities in the U.S., and a high competitor for the worldwide title, in my opinion. It was founded in 1718, making it one of the oldest cities. And yeah, so it has a ton of dark history, ghosts, deaths. I mean, it's insane. And black magic or voodoo or however people describe it. There's so many variations, to be honest, so
Sure.
Who knows? So I'm going to start with Madame Delphine's early childhood, because like any serial killer, you kind of start out with that. Delphine was born in New Orleans, and her family were prominent members of the European Creole community. Her uncle was mayor of New Orleans, but in 1791, when Delphine was 4 years old, a resistance was formed by the slaves and the Haitian Revolution began. Delphine's uncle was murdered by his own slaves, and he was one of many slave owners and their families that were killed. This was a win for the enslaved, but in 1811, the German Coast Uprising caused a backlash, and slave owners started treating their slaves even worse to prevent any future insurrections.
Joy.
Yeah, it's really weird.
That's awful.
Just shitty. Seeing all this occur as a young child, some people believe that it sparked Delphine's psychotic behavior. This is by no means an excuse for her crimes and that she will commit, but serial killers don't usually have a good excuse to begin with.
Wait.
So this is just like the childhood.
I know, but I just need to verify that I heard you correctly. They're saying that a slave uprising may have caused someone to become a serial killer?
Or seeing like so many of her, like her family or like people. Do you know what I'm saying? Like it's the dumbest excuse, quote unquote. But my point is that
serial killers are crazy.
Oh, right. That's what I'm saying. Like they're just crazy.
They don't need any reason to kill.
Listen, I'm just telling a story.
All right.
that people told me to tell. So anyway, yeah, lame excuse. Let's get into her marriages. Delphine was married, or she married her first husband when she was 13 years old. He was a high-ranking Spanish officer. His name was Don Ramon de Lopez y Angulo, but he died when the couple was en route to Madrid. Mysterious way, some people say. Delphine at the time was pregnant and decided to return to New Orleans. She married 2 more times. Her second husband was a banker and legislator, so he had a lot of money, but he died 8 years later. She ended up having 4 kids with that guy. The third time, she married a physician named Leonard Nicholas LaLaurie, so that's where she got her name, and she kept it.
Okay.
He was much younger than her, 20 years younger, in fact.
Oh, wow.
And
tables have turned.
Yeah, right. So from what I understand, she actually, well, I don't know if she forced him, but they were kind of forced into this marriage because he got her pregnant. So it's kind of like what you do.
Gotcha.
They ran in the same social circles, and he was a doctor, so it wasn't really easy for him to kind of get away with it.
Sure.
They did not have a good marriage, but it lasted a long time. So
lots of husbands, lots of turmoil.
Yeah.
She had a good life.
She's just kind of all over the place. By this point, Delphine was very rich, and in 1832, she built her own mansion, which at the time I think was only 2 stories, but eventually a third story was added. So when you look at the pictures, it's a 3-story house. The mansion also had an attached slaves' quarter. The building is still existing and is located on 1140 Royal Street, if anyone's curious, but no one is allowed inside today. So like no one can go in there. Madame Delphine's twisted story begins here. Now, there are conflicting histories as to what really happened at the LaLaurie Mansion. Many downplay what occurred, while others may have sensationalized it, especially some tour groups, things like that. Mm-hmm. I'm going to give the information I felt was most common, and I will also try to give like counter arguments that to me seemed legit, instead of just being like, oh, you guys are crazy, and then that was it. Anyway, so in 1832, when Delphine built her home, the neighbors began to suspect that strange things were going on in her house. Rumors began to emerge that when a new slave was brought into the home, they were never seen again. Good start, people. So one particular story that I'm going to start with was brought the attention that Delphine might have been really cruel to her slaves, was when witnesses saw a 12-year-old girl, a slave girl named Leah, being chased by Delphine with a whip. This was being witnessed by her neighbors. The neighbors saw Delphine chase her all the way to the roof, where the little girl was either pushed or jumped off out of fear and died. Authorities got involved to investigate and ultimately decided that it was just unsafe for the slaves to live in the home and were removed to where they can be resold. Delphine was not going down without a fight, so she got her friends and family to attend the auction to buy back her slaves.
Hey, this is horrible. Like,
it's the worst.
I know that we always talk about how slaves are treated like property, but to have your slaves repoed, that's weird.
Right? Like they're, I don't know, like just
everything about it makes me sick.
Well, get ready.
Oh no.
Now, according to historical records, Delphine's first mistreatment incident towards enslaved people was probably in 1828, when she ended up paying a fine and then was forced to sell her slaves as well. So this has already happened to her. And this is something that I think was actually in record, so they can't really dispute it. So when people say, no, she was super nice to her slaves, I'm like, well, how come authorities in a place where it's illegal to have slaves are even like, you can't have them because you don't know.
That's bad.
Right. I am going to source credit to GhostCityTours.com. They had an incredible website, very well done. Like I had seen read a lot of articles and videos on YouTube, whatnot, about the LaLaurie Mansion, and this article really put a lot of the information that I had already found and more in their website. So if someone wants to check it out, totally worth a read.
Perfect.
On April 10th, 1834, a fire broke out at the mansion. This is where I'm going to put the disclaimer, because it's going to get really bad.
Oh, no.
So a few seconds here.
I'm already upset because whenever we talk about slaves, I get mad.
Oh, I do too.
It's such a disgusting
How
thing.
do you think I felt when I was like just sitting there like, oh my God, am I actually just reading this at 2 a.m. all alone? But yeah, it's terrifying and sad. So here we go. When firefighters arrived at the scene, the first person they saw was a 70-year-old woman chained to the stove in the kitchen.
What?
The woman said, "Please let me die. I started the fire and I wanted everyone to die because it's better than spending another day here." Once the fire was put out, firefighters went to investigate parts of the home, particularly the servants' quarters in the attic, but I think it's just called slaves' quarters. I always have a hard time finding out which one to use, but anyway.
Yeah.
The rooms were locked from the outside, so when they asked Delphine to open them, she flat out refused. Since this wasn't exactly a request, the fireman continued to just break down the doors. Okay, everyone put down your snack if you're eating, because I was.
Oh, great. Was this something I made for you? Did it ruin something I cooked?
I was eating the Frito pie I made, so it was.
Oh, okay.
Because it's about to get more graphic, so I just want to warn you, I was not prepared for this. According to a local newspaper called the New Orleans Bee, after firefighters entered the attic, this is how the article describes their findings. Quote, "Upon entering one of the apartments, the most appalling spectacle met their eyes. Several slaves, more or less horribly mutilated, were seen suspended from the neck, with their limbs apparently stretched and torn from one extremity to the other. Language is powerless and inadequate to give a proper recollection of the horror which a scene like this must have inspired. We shall not attempt it, but leave it rather to the reader's imagination to picture what it was. The slaves were the property of the demon in the shape of a woman whom we mentioned in the beginning of this article. They had been confined by her for several months in the situation from which they had thus been rescued and had merely been kept in existence to prolong their suffering and make them taste all that the most refined cruelty could inflict. But why dwell upon the particulars? We feel confident that the community will share with us our indignation, and thus vengeance will fall heavily full upon the guilty culprit." End quote. More specifically, I found out, this article also went on to say that many were chained to the wall. Seriously, Jace, get ready. I think I'm going to barely be able to say this out loud. Some were in small cages. Others were tied to operating tables, makeshift operating tables. Some had spiked collars. Others were left naked and mutilated. Some bodies had their stomachs cut open and their intestines were wrapped around them. Others had their mouths stuffed with trash or their own body parts and then sewn shut. There was a girl found with many of her limbs broken in unnatural ways, and the idea was that when she healed, she would look like a crab. There was also a man that had his head drilled open on top, and sticking out of it was a wooden spoon. Blech. There was a woman whose limbs were completely removed. Some of them had their skin peeled back. Lots of genital mutilation. Everyone was starved and dehydrated, and to top it all off, her victims had to endure all of this with buckets of random body parts surrounding the room. In one article, it was estimated that 40 slaves went missing at this house. I am so sorry, your face. Sorry, I'm laughing, but I'm just mortified. Sorry.
It's really disgusting. Mm-hmm. This is like Jeffrey Dahmer, Ed Gein kind of repulsive.
It's beyond repulsive, but...
Because she's not just killing them.
No. She was like psycho.
Yeah, that's gross.
Well, I'm sorry I had to say that, but okay. So there were some survivors from the entire incident.
I don't know if I'd call that surviving if you were in that situation.
Right. Some were found in the attic and others were in the servants' quarters. Those that were trapped in the attic later succumbed to their injuries that were inflicted on them, while others died of smoke inhalation. Others that were quote-unquote lucky, like we mentioned, did recover. Soon people became aware of what happened, and they were completely outraged. A mob of about 4,000 people formed around the mansion and began to destroy it out of anger and disgust. I think a lot of them did also feel like betrayed, in a sense, because they thought she was this wonderful woman, and really in secret she was doing all these just unthinkable things, which is interesting because, you know, they're also slave owners, but I guess they just thought this was too far, even for anyone. Delphine and her family managed to escape and eventually moved back to Paris, where she would die.
They escaped a 4,000 person mob?
I think at some point when they were like, we're gonna knock this down, she's like, zip, like totally left, from what I said. Like, she escaped.
Wait, you said Delphine and her family?
Most of her family, it looks like, yeah.
Wait, she had family members who were willing to hang out with her after this?
This is also assuming that they
didn't
knew.
help?
Or they didn't help, right, but who knows? Yeah, so she went to Paris. She lived there for the rest of her life, and she died in 1849. The records of her death are still shaky, as in, like, people aren't really sure if she died in France, but it seems like there is enough evidence, especially there were these old letters between her and her children, where Delphine writes that she misses New Orleans, but her children respond with, "Do you remember what happened there?" So it's kind of one of those things where, like, it was obvious that she was not living in the States anymore. There are also some records that suggest that after she died, her body was returned to New Orleans to be buried there. That one was because there was like a tombstone that had her name or a similar version of it, and the time frame fit as well. So they're thinking maybe they did bring her back at some point, but that's still not really determined.
It's not confirmed.
Right. One of the articles I read that was a source was from Jean Delavine's writings, which she published in 1946. So this would have been 112 years after the fire. Today, her writings can be found in a book called Ghost Stories of the Old New Orleans. In the book, she goes on to also say that when the property was being recovered, or renovated, additional bodies were discovered underneath the house, all of which had signs of physical abuse. Her sources were gathered from old newspapers, interviews, and neighborhood hearsay, I guess. It's like stories that may have stuck around, and so she interviewed people around that were passed down from from their family members.
I mean, I am all for protecting historical buildings to an extent.
Right.
But do you really renovate a house that was a torture dungeon from hell? Like, that's something you burn down and walk away.
Well, let me put it this way. Like, there are museums dedicated to serial killers that have their belongings. They're not historical, not in the sense where they're like, we need to remember the victims or anything like that.
If this was being saved to become a memorial for the victims, that's one thing, and I totally understand.
Oh, it was never, I don't think.
Yeah, no, this was some guy who walked in there, he's like, oh man, the bloodstained attic, we just need to replaster this so that we can...
New wallpaper.
So we can like have this become our kids' new playroom.
Yeah.
This is disgusting. The house shouldn't burn to the ground.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's what the neighborhood was trying to do, but they were stopped by police. After the mob was being controlled. They were seriously like...
This is
destroyed.
Before tear gas. A 4,000 person mob should be able to achieve anything.
4,000 was a high estimate. Right, that's true. So I don't know, but I think 4,000 was the highest number. I also read an article that said 2,000. Still, we're in the thousands. That's a lot of people.
I'd like to point out that if I lived at this time, I could by myself, I'd wait until the mob was gone, and like a week later, I'd go burn it down.
Oh, right. Who knows how far their intent was going. Maybe they were just furious and wanted to do a big to-do and was like, yeah, I'm here too. I don't know.
This is
people
appalling.
Are weird. Yeah, it's true. Just for everyone's sanity, I'm going to stop talking about the horrible things very specifically and end the disclaimer here. So no longer are we going to say this or that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
We won't go into specifics. Now, since I end the disclaimer, I'm going to do a PG recap version so that people who did not want to listen to the other details I had, they didn't miss any important information. So for the other people, like I said, there was a fire at the LaLaurie Mansion in 1834. When firefighters got there, they saw that Madame Delphine mistreated her slaves and she was going to get into a lot of trouble.
A lot of them died.
Yeah. So like a scaredy cat, she left New Orleans and moved back to Paris. And that's basically all you should really have to know. Now, there are some counter arguments. A lot of people believe that the conditions that, she inflicted on her slaves were sensationalized. They think that, yes, she may have been rougher, but not to the extent of the stuff I said earlier.
I think maybe they were just stories to what end?
For tours. This could have been a lot later.
But don't you have that, wasn't that newspaper article from when it actually happened?
I'm going to get into that.
Oh, okay.
So much of this horrific information came also from the newspaper called New Orleans Bee. It helped spread the story like wildfire. And I'm guessing that what was her name? Delavine, the woman who ended up writing it like 100 years later about it, she said that she also got news articles. I'm guessing it might have been this same one. And I will say that for the people who are always counter-arguing what Madame Delphine might have done, this actually gives them validity. So let me explain. This newspaper was not necessarily known to be the most reliable. Many people today compare it to the National Enquirer.
Oh, great.
Oh, dear. For example, one of the Bee's prime sources came from neighbors. So it was all like word of mouth kind of thing, which is fine. Except there was this one guy called Monsieur Montreuil. He had a huge crush on Delphine, and she, of course, never reciprocated. So many people believe he may have made up a lot of the stories to get back at her. Although that's quite the imagination.
Well, okay. What we can get away with printing today, our levels of censorship are considerably less than they would have been in the 1800s.
Sure.
I think the kinds of things they were talking about might not have, if it were not true, would have been considered completely unacceptable to put in print.
It just would have been excessive, right?
Oh, I'm like, unless they were able to be like, this actually happened, most people would be like, you don't print this stuff. It's inappropriate.
Right, exactly.
So that, I don't know if I buy this.
Sure. So, but that is a counter argument, and that is true. I mean, the Bee, a lot of people say, no, historians, they're like, this was kind of a sensationalized newspaper, all that stuff. Also, other people have come to Delphine's defense and state that she always treated her slaves well, like, quote, and these are from her friends, like other people, She would hand her half-empty glass of wine at dinner parties to the slave who waited behind her chair, insisting that they drink it, which I guess would have been just so kind. And other lovely phrases like the little N-word who leaped from the roof fleeing Delphine's whip was actually sliding down a curving banister, playing and fell being killed by the marble hallway floor, end quote. So some of these like defenses are just also
they
horrible.
Sound pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, and you know, like preposterous, you know, and
she wasn't whipping the boy, he fell while playing on the stairs.
He fell on the whip. I don't understand.
Where have I heard that? I fell down some stairs before. Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Spousal abuse.
Every single abuse story ever. Yeah, so I mean, again, this isn't very helpful considering the source. So
I don't know if there's something wrong with me, but I'm inclined to believe all the horrible things, and I don't want to. But for some reason, my brain's like, these horrible things happened.
I think my takeaway was, you know, there were some other people who were saying, okay, forget about the other guys, like the ones who are like saying, oh, you know, she would give her half-drink wine. Okay, aside from that, people were like, okay, yeah, maybe things would have gone wrong, but maybe it wasn't to that extent kind of thing. Like she was just cruel.
Okay, yeah. I can give credit to those stories.
Yeah.
But it sounds like if she's fleeing in a mob forms... chances are something... The mob didn't form because, like, I can't believe this woman gave half of a wine glass to her slaves. Let's go kill her.
Right. No, it was for other reasons, for sure. And so they had to have been extreme enough for people to just be like, you're a terrible person. So that is kind of her story. I felt like it was important. It was historical. And also, whether or not, again, any of these things actually occurred, these things absolutely, horrible things did happen during slavery. I don't know. I just feel like these things aren't talked about sometimes, or they're very censored. I even tried kind of censoring people from hearing it, giving them a chance to, like, if they didn't want to feel sad right now, they don't have to. Anyway, point being, let's go into the hauntings.
Sweet.
Because there has to be after this story.
Let's just brighten this story up now.
Let's get really, really wild with it. Okay. Since Madame Delphine left the mansion, there have been tons of owners, and it's also believed that anyone who ended up owning the home would either die or come to, like, severe financial misfortune. Like, they think it's kind of a curse at this point. And here are some of the stories. In 1840, a man purchased the property. He didn't last very long. In fact, he decided to just lease it, but again, no one would stay long enough. Eventually, the property was up for sale again, and I think in classic horror fashion, there was so many people buying it and then reselling it immediately. Okay. Always a bad sign.
So, quick story time.
I knew you were going to go there.
Our sister-in-law, she lives in a really nice neighborhood.
Yeah.
And like a block or so away from her, there's been this house that keeps going on sale. It's not being rented. It's like going on sale and then being bought and sold like weeks, if not months later. And this has been happening repeatedly for like, 2 years now? So even before the pandemic, it's absolutely crazy. And all that says to me is people have moved in. Because, I mean, if there were repair issues, this would come to light and people would buy it knowing something needs to be fixed. But it just screams to me, maybe the house is haunted.
Yeah, I swear, like, if you weren't going to bring it up at this point, I was about to, like, talk about that too and be like, actually, I know something similar. And so I'm convinced, like, yeah, my sister, Vivi, she also mentioned that when she's walking her son, you know, just to, like, have around the neighborhood, and they'd always pass by, sometimes she would purposely walk across the street away from it because she has felt like scared.
Yeah, bad mojo.
Yeah, just like not cool house, not cool. And her not really knowing anything about it at this point. So that's something to say, in my opinion. I think that's pretty damn creepy.
Well, and I think, I mean, it would have been a little different back in, when did this guy buy, like the 1800s still? It was still the 1800s when he bought this?
When he bought it, 1840.
Yeah, so then maybe, you know, buying a home was a different scenario than it is now. But nowadays, buying a home is such a arduous process that to buy a home and then sell it to someone else, to buy it, to sell it, and just have that happen so repeatedly, something's wrong.
But a big house, it's not like a common home where anyone can afford it. This is a mansion. Yeah.
Not the one near our sister, the one in the story.
Obviously. Oh yeah, the LaLaurie house.
The one near our sister is a tiny normal house.
Yeah, exactly. So that was the first person I think that purchased a house. And then around 1874, the building was turned into an all-girls school.
Sweet.
There were often complaints from the children reporting to the teachers that a woman would scratch their arms, leave bruises or red marks. And whenever the teachers asked, well, who did this? Or, obviously questions like, how did this happen? They would always describe the same woman who had a whip. Kind of weird.
That whip again, coming back.
Yeah, I know. Full circle. In the 1880s, the mansion had earned the name The Haunted House of New Orleans, which is a hell of a statement considering how many haunted houses there are. People who spent the night there often reported seeing a woman with red eyes staring at them in the dark as they slept. People also have described this exact same woman walking outside late at night. So different accounts from different people at different times.
Makes you wonder how many of these people were aware of the history of the house, or if this happened to them obliviously.
I think locally, very well known. This was not necessarily hidden, in my opinion, from what I understand.
Okay.
So just kind of passed down stories. Again, like when I said about that woman's writings, like when she wanted to write a book about it, kind of. This was like 100 years later, and when she went to the neighboring areas, everyone
had things to say.
Everyone had something to say. So in 1894, the mansion was converted into apartments where there was a murder in one of the units. Friends of the murdered victim said, quote, he would often complain about sprites that inhabited his home, end quote. Police did an investigation on the murder and concluded that it was a robbery gone wrong. However, there was no real evidence that anything was missing from the apartment, although that also would have been very hard to determine as well.
Sure.
Other people think that the evil entity that tormented the man eventually killed him, which is like the extreme opposite of what was probably the case. Again, if someone's trying to rob your home and it goes horribly wrong and they shoot you, typically, I think, they're not going to stick around and then rob you. So if they, do you know what I'm saying? Like, they're going to be like, uh-oh, bye.
Considering the contents of what we heard in the censored portion, I don't know if I want to make assumptions about what people do and don't do.
I'm sure there are exceptions. And we've seen some true crime episodes where, serial killers stick around and, like, hang out their victims' homes. But in this instance, I'm just thinking, like, maybe it was just some guy who's like, I need some cash. Oh, no, I killed someone. Bye. That's just my assumption. Or at least maybe.
Or maybe they're like
so.
Man, well, I guess I've killed someone. Might as well make sure I get money now or something.
Ooh, that's a really good way of looking at it. Yeah, I suppose so. So in that case, who knows what happened?
Yeah. I hope I never know. I never want to be in the criminal element.
I know, and this is a kind of a true crime kind of / haunted episode. Okay, so I'm going to move forward. There have been other owners, other different experiences, but I'm just going to share a few other ones. In 2007, Nicolas Cage purchased the home.
What?
Yeah.
Is this what happened to his career?
Interesting thing you to say. Though he lived there for only 2 years.
He was able to make it 2 years.
2 years. In an interview with Vanity Fair, Cage says, quote, I bought it in 2007, figuring it would be a good place in which to write the great American horror novel. I didn't get too far with the novel, end quote. In another interview with Forbes, he says, quote, other people have beachfront properties. I have ghost front property. That's what I always say. I have not experienced anything, but I like a bit of mystery, and the house has such a mystery to it. Some of the stories about it are pretty horrific, end quote. So from what I understand, he's pretty chill about it. However, a cleaning lady that worked there during, while he was there, said sometimes after making the bed, she would turn away for a moment, and when she would turn back around, there would be a human indentation on the bed, like someone was still lying there.
That's creepy.
And she would try fixing it. Like whenever she'd fix it, it would lift, the sheets would lift and stuff like that. And it seems like when it would settle again, it would happen again. And these are brand new beds. These aren't like the beds from the 1800s or whatever. These are
That's messed
new.
up. Like now I'm trying to picture if it's just like the blankets and they're like going down into the bed, like there's a ghost on top of them, or if it's like in other movies you see it where you see the sheets but it looks like there's someone under it but there's no one under it.
Well, it said indentation, so I'm thinking like sinking in kind of thing.
Chunky ghost on top.
Like yeah, just some fat ghost.
You're like, yo, ghost, I can't see you, but I can tell you got a fat ass.
Are you hitting on a ghost?
I'm a fat ass insulting, not like a yeah girl.
Oh, you mean ass. Like F, not PH?
It's like, damn, that's one fat ass.
Okay, well, you're gonna get haunted. Just kidding.
Big booty ghost.
Oh my god.
You can't see it, but I'm dancing.
I know. That's why I'm laughing. Oh my God. So let's see, where the hell was I? Oh yeah, so the bed making, totally weird. So like I said, he only lived there for 2 years and he moved in 2009. He ended up selling it back. Oh no, he ended up selling it because he went bankrupt, which a lot of people believe is the curse of the house.
I remember when... Okay, so I'm assuming this is around the same time. I remember hearing when Nick Cage went bankrupt because he also owned an island.
He did, yeah. Does he not still? I
don't think he does anymore. And he also... At one point, he owned Action Comics #1, the most valuable comic book in history. It was the first superhero, which was Superman ever. And I think he had to sell it for like $1 million something. Is
that how much it's worth? I don't know.
When he did it, I think it's worth a lot more now. But when he did it, which was years ago. So yeah, apparently Nicolas Cage has had some money problems.
But like, how do you go bankrupt when you have all these assets? Like, I don't know. Who knows what happened?
So that's interesting. So either he's just really bad at financial decisions, no insult intended,
and this was just one of his many purchases,
or
the curse.
He got cursed by crazy serial killer lady.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking.
Like, that was totally what happened.
That's it. In 2010. A guy named Michael Whalen purchased the home. He hired an interior designer by the name of Katie Stacy Scott, who was based out of Houston and had never heard about the home's history. She quickly learned all about it when she went down there, and she has a quote, or it was like a quote from the article. It was like, "Uh-oh, what have I gotten myself into?" I just thought it was cute.
I was imagining Job from Arrested Development saying that. He's like, "What did I do?"
Oh yeah, what have I done? She ended up getting this is her solution. She ended up getting a bottle of holy water from her church, and she'd sprinkle some on herself every time she went into the house. I
like this girl.
She's like, I'm not fucking with this.
I'm with her. Like, if I had the opportunity to be like, hey man, this is legit holy water, I'd be like, I'd spray it like perfume and walk through it.
Oh my God.
Day.
She literally said that in her.
See,
I didn't put the quote down here, but she's like, it was my perfume.
I told you, me and this girl, we're thinking eye to eye.
This is freaking me out.
We are the same. That is neat.
Oh my God, that's the best thing ever.
So goddamn the same.
You are the same. So yeah, that was her. And she also said that she did experience some weird stuff, even though not like directly towards her, but in the house itself. She would hear the faucets in the bathroom turn on and the doors to the kitchen open and close at random.
Okay.
Katie had a really good quote regarding to her experiences. She said, quote, "Neither sounds particularly frightening unless you're a contractor," end quote. She had a carpenter level the doors multiple times because it kept opening and closing. She's like, there is no spare no expense kind of job. You know what I mean?
Like, issue, we got to fix it.
Right. Do it the best way you can, brand new, level it, do what you have to do to make sure these things don't swing open and close on their own, and they would still happen. Whatever was replaced to fix the issue would have still an issue. So that's kind of creepy.
Money pit.
Money pit or what the hell? So that was her story. So, I mean, she tried everything she could to stop the hauntings, but there really wasn't apparently a lot she could. Another story from working with this guy, Michael Whalen, the caretaker at the time called Carol Williams, had a lot of things happen to her. She would receive phone calls from the house's landline to her cell phone when no one else was in the home. She also believed that the ghost of the LaLaurie house would follow her home. One Tuesday night, when she was at her apartment with a friend, she suddenly heard the microwave turn on, her front door flew open, the TV turned on, and her little dog started barking in the direction of their bedroom. Then, moments later, her phone rang again, and the LaLaurie landline appeared as the caller.
Really?
Yeah. She did admit that after the renovations were done, that the house hauntings did mellow down a bit. So she wasn't as
they removed some haunted bits?
Maybe they... Who knows? Like, maybe an entire floor where someone died on, and then the wood was...
Or some, blood-soaked beams.
Yeah. Possible.
That's disgusting.
Who knows what happened, but whatever trinkets or things that were in there... Yeah, left with it, perhaps.
I don't know what would be weirder walking into this house and knowing that Nick Cage used to own it, or that a bunch of people were killed. I know which one's more horrible.
Oh, I was going to say,
I actually like Nick Cage, but I mean, I don't know what would hit me harder at first to be like, a bunch of people met their untimely death here, or Nick Cage knew this, bought it, and lived here for a while.
Bought it, yeah.
They're both such weird concepts.
It really threw me for a loop when I read that. I'm not going to lie. I was like, Nick Cage? I really wasn't expecting it, and it was kind of a treat after all the crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, this is also crazy, but in a fun way. Anyway, so, yeah, those are kind of like specific stories, and these are other hauntings that people experience more, like on a regular. Like everyone seems to really, the most common, I should say. It is also said that there's not one room in the entire mansion that people have not experienced something paranormal, which is also kind of rare in a way, unless you have a really small house.
Yeah, usually have like hot spots, but then there's like dead zones, and it sounds like there's no dead zone.
There's no dead zone, and it seems like consistent just the fuck everywhere.
I bet there's orbs everywhere.
Orbs up yo butt.
Nothing but orbs.
Yeah, exactly. So yes, these are the common ones. Pots and pans will be heard clanging. The doorknob into the kitchen would slowly turn and open with intent. We already heard that one.
That one messes me up. Pots and pans clean, airflow, it just happens.
Sure. Little things here and there. But seeing the doorknob, they're like, we've seen the doorknob turn. Not like, oh, I heard a door open for no reason. Or I didn't
close it.
Right.
Yeah.
No. Very intentional. Phones will go off, but no one would be on the other line. So this is now on the landline. During tours or just passing by from the outside. So like I said, the tours that they give of the house, they never go inside. You're always outside.
Oh.
You're not allowed. Right. But so this is just for being outside. People have experienced feeling dizzy, hearing muffled moaning or screaming like someone's being tortured, feeling like someone is watching them, like physical, just right now in this window. And it's very particular sometimes too with people. They're like, there's someone over there kind of thing. That's
a feeling we all know.
We all know it. Oh yeah.
I never turn my nose up to when people have that feeling, because when you have it, it's like unmistakable. I've never had it like maybe someone's watching me. It's always, I think I'm being watched.
Yeah, and it's so, I don't know if it's animalistic is like the right term, but like I said, do you remember when I told you about when I was editing one of our episodes?
Yeah.
And I instantly, like, it was just like a light switch. I felt like someone was watching me from the window, and I'm like, I gotta leave. So yeah, anyway.
I put so much credit on that feeling. That's one of the ones that makes me go, maybe ghosts do exist.
Yeah, that was the first and only time I've ever felt that in this house, so I believed that instinct for sure. So that, and then also there have been accounts of seeing a little girl standing or sitting on top of the roof, or worse, they actually see her fall off and land in the same area that the little girl did when she died. Of course, there would never be anyone there when they investigated. Hearing scratches on the floorboards was another fun little thing.
That's just mice.
Yeah, it's just possibly, I would actually think it probably was.
Mice.
Yeah, mice. People feeling just sick, like nauseated,
that
dizzy.
Could be in your head.
Could be in your head.
If I'm scared a place is haunted, I'm gonna worry myself sick. My brain does.
Well,
that.
Anxiety can induce that.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
I'm the kind of guy who will worry myself. Like I'll manifest these emotions. So it's so easy for me when I'm not experiencing to be like, I totally think you can cause that on.
Well, we've talked about that. You've definitely have done that to yourself.
Absolutely.
With like claustrophobia, you're very claustrophobic, and so when we were in some of the more restricting areas in Europe, like the catacombs in Paris. Oh yeah, things went wrong.
And so I know how powerful the brain is, and it's terrifying. The experience is real, but I'm willing to say people might be doing that to themselves.
Yeah, no, that's fair. Smelling burning flesh.
Okay, now that's different. That one messes me up too.
Also, I also wonder, like, I've never smelled that, and I really pray I never do.
Yeah.
Not even my own. I know people have smelled their own, like when they burn themselves badly, they're like, "Oh,
I've burnt myself
that's
on
me."
The oven, and I can smell my skin cooked. It's awful.
I literally don't think I've ever burned myself that bad. Then. And
it turns like skin changes color. It's like the worst thing ever.
I'm like, okay, that's just.
Yeah, we probably should have put a disclaimer on that little statement there. Sorry, y'all.
So
don't be eating during
this
that.
Isn't like necessarily. This is just anyone can happen. Like, be careful, because if you're boiling water or anything like that, just be careful. Anyway. Chains being dragged or rattling violently. That's another weird one, which makes sense with some of the things we talked about. And I feel like we all know what that would sound like. It's pretty unmistakable.
Absolutely.
And jarring if there's no one else in the house or where there should be. Seeing full body apparitions, for sure. A lot of times people said that they look like normal people, like they thought they were real. Other people say that they end up looking like some of Delphine's victims. I'll leave it there.
Yeah, I can't talk about what keeps popping in my head because it was part of our censored thing. But there's one particular image I'm seeing in my head, and it's horrifying.
I have a feeling...
You know exactly which one it is.
Well, it's a whole thing that's really been circulating in my brain. Oh, no, you're doing the motion?
Sorry,
God damn it.
That was not meant to be funny, but I was like, how do I...
I'm so traumatized.
I'll just say Zoidberg.
Zoidberg. Oh, my God. For all your Futurama fans, we ruined it for you now.
Right.
Okay, so today, the mansion is owned by, I just wrote it like the way the article did because it made me laugh, an oil tycoon from Texas. The owner was very strict and won't let anyone inside, so he's the guy that, like, today, no one's allowed. When American Horror Story Season 3 was to be filmed, they asked permission if they could film some scenes inside, which they said no. And then they asked, well, can I film the outside? And they were like, no. So they're very, like, private.
I wonder why. That's either for creepy reasons or they're like, no, this needs to, like, never be visited. Or, like, is it for a good, respectful reason or...
Well, I don't know because, people have seen
now?
The owners at the house. Like, sometimes they'll be at the balcony.
Like, so they live there? They don't just... It's not like just an owned property no one's in?
Well, I'm going to assume since this guy's from Texas, this might be like a vacation home. And if he's an oil tycoon, he'd probably afford whatever the hell. Anyway, so, yeah, people have seen him in the house, as in, like, living there.
Sure.
And whenever a tour would come by, he would, like, get inside. Like, he was just very... He hated the attention it got, which is very interesting because I feel like he should have known what he was buying.
Totally.
You know? So, I'm very conflicted by it. Like, I get it. You want your privacy. But why specific the LaLaurie house then? Pretty sure there is tons and tons and tons of other mansions to buy in New Orleans. Or make your own. I don't know.
It could be just that my brain is in a morose place from everything you talked about earlier.
Sure.
But I'm only assuming for bad reasons.
Oh, yeah. Very, very possible. So anyway, I don't know this guy. So hopefully it's for good reasons. Maybe he's trying to protect it, like protect people. Just trying to give the benefit of the doubt. So yeah, so like I said, he's very, very private. And he won't even allow, now obviously since he didn't allow tours or filming crew or anything like that, no popular paranormal investigating show has been there. Dang. So that's impressive. That is until 2019, when a show called Portals to Hell on the Travel Channel became the first paranormal show allowed to investigate the inside. Which, by the way, I found out. I'd never heard of this show, by the way. I don't have cable or streaming. I wonder
why they got the permission slip.
No idea. I don't know about that. One of the hosts is, or rather, one of the paranormal investigators is Jack Osborne.
Wait, like Ozzy Osbourne's son?
Yeah.
That guy?
That guy. He's one of the investigators, along with Katrina Weidman, and she is a prominent paranormal investigator. If you're into all those shows, you would already know her from the popular show called Paranormal Lockdown. I do know her. She's awesome. I was not able to see the episode again because I don't have Travel Channel in any capacity, and I didn't see it, like, quote-unquote, for free anywhere. But there was a 7-minute teaser on YouTube that talks about some cool stuff, like some of the things that they came across, and here's some of the things. A woman by the name Anne, who used to live at the house, this is one of the people that they were interviewing, said that her and her family would frequently have paranormal experiences. She would hear footsteps. One night, her father woke up to find a man in a top hat walking from the armoire into the other room. So just someone, like, walking by that should not have been there.
Yeah, top hat's not something where you trigger the light. You're like, that's a top hat.
Like, yeah. You're like, he's literally wearing a top hat. Yeah, exactly. So that happened to her father, Anne's father. And then after Anne and her family had moved out, she decided to to return to the home 20 years later to, what she said, make peace with the house. Mm-hmm. The moment she got close to the house, something shoved her incredibly hard, knocking her on the ground. So it did not want her back, or like maybe someone was like, don't come back here for your protection. There is also stories that people say that there are protective ghosts inside. So not everything in there is evil or trying to hurt you. Some of it's very kind of residual as well.
It's like that line from the third Annabelle movie. It's like, not all ghosts are bad.
Oh my God, that's right. It took me a second. I was like, what are you talking about?
It's supposed to be like that one ghost. I won't say which one it is because if you haven't seen the movie,
it's a bit of a spoiler. Yeah.
But yeah, so there's that one ghost who turned out to not be like a dick.
Yeah, so there is actually a male ghost that whenever there is something bad happening.
At this house.
At this LaLaurie house. No, not the movie again. Sorry. Yeah, at this house that is known to protect you. So if you start feeling scared and you see him, you feel at peace. Or if you start seeing him after hearing noises, the noise will stop after he gets there. Just like very interesting things. Yeah, I forgot to mention that earlier. I don't think I wrote it down either. Why? I don't know. Okay. So back to the paranormal lockdown show.
Sure.
There is also a clip of the duo investigators, so Jack and Katrina, doing their investigation, and they get some pretty cool evidence. Of course, they don't show the whole thing. Again, it's only like 7 minutes long teaser.
And they don't want to ruin it.
And they don't want to ruin it.
It's not a 90s trailer.
Yeah, but from what it does have a 90s trailer. From what Katrina said is that she never felt anything threatening or evil in the house, but does think that there is a lot of energy there. And they do capture some cool things. There was like little minor clips of being able to see like or hear things, feeling cold spots, all that jazz. Classic paranormal show stuff. I really want to see this episode, especially to see.
I'm pretty excited.
Oh, I really want to see the inside of it, you know?
Yeah, I need to see what this hell house looked like.
Yeah, right.
Post multiple renovation hell house.
Oh, yeah. It's actually, from what I understand, very luxurious and beautiful inside now, modernized in many ways. It's not what it was. It was never supposed to be kept very historical, from what I understand. And who knows what it looked like before, but...
So I can tell you I am interested in seeing what it looks like on the inside in video.
Yeah.
I have no interest in going to this place. Ever.
I mean,
The history of it's just too revolting.
It's tough. I get what you're saying, and I'm not lying. This is probably one of the more horrific situations that one could encounter, even at the time of slavery.
Yeah.
But... I would be willing to go and look at it from the outside. I don't need to go inside.
I might be willing to look at it from the outside.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where, to me, it's not because of the hauntings that I'm scared. Or it's not that I'm scared either. The hauntings aren't the problem. It's disturbed by. I mean, I want to go to New Orleans.
And I understand why people won't want to go there for that reason.
And so far, there's a lot of other haunted stuff that, to me, all the other haunted stuff just sounds nice.
Yeah.
So,
I think I'm there for the entertainment and other fashions, like the culture as well. Like, it's just such a bizarre, eclectic, insane city, which I'm pretty fascinated. It has an incredible history, and as far as macabre goes, there's plenty of more to explore that's going to be like less painful to to endure for some. So I mean, I would love to maybe walk by it, but not necessarily go in. I think you're right, it's not really necessary in a weird way, but I think I'm definitely going to go to New Orleans at some point, and I'm excited for that.
Well, if we're going to do that, you need to do a lot more New Orleans stories so that we know where we're going to go and check out all the places in between when we're getting drunk.
Yeah, well, first I was like, oh, we can totally come to this house. And then the more I read, I was like, oh, dear God, no.
Maybe we're not going to come to
And also, we're not allowed anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
A house that survived being burned down in a mob of 4,000 people and being owned by Nick Cage, and it's still around.
I like those are your 2 points.
I have a feeling that if, the levees completely break and the polar ice caps melt and New Orleans is eventually submerged in water, which will happen. I'm sorry, in a long enough time scale, it's going to happen.
Permanently, not just like a hurricane.
Yeah, I have a feeling that everything's going to get washed away, and you could go excavating in 1,000, 2,000, whatever years, and that house will still be there. Everything else is gone, but that house is still going to freaking be there.
That house, for whatever the hell reason, is going to stand.
The most haunted location under the ocean.
Yeah. I would say that has a pretty horrific history. So, yeah, okay. Well, that was my story. I think I said the word horrifying so many times in this episode. More than I probably should.
See, I have a feeling that slowly Lily's trying to turn this into a true crime
I
podcast.
know, without Chase knowing.
Yeah, well, fun times.
Yeah, so I think based on all that, I'm pretty sure that we all need another drink, whether that is alcohol, another cup of coffee, or just some water, because holy hell, we need a little bit of water right now after that story.
Absolutely.
So we'll be right back. And Chase, I think you have a little thing for us.
I got a little thing for you.
Yay. See you in a bit. Okay, so we're back, and we definitely have our drinks now because Again, I needed
a stiff
it.
one to... Yeah.
Oh, hell yes.
All right, so what we're about to talk about is complete 180 degrees to an end of episode and counter.
Yay, something fun.
Over the last couple months, we've been regularly giving updates on the pending release of a report that was going to come out. Well, it just came out last week, and it came out right after your quarter episode, so we had to wait till this episode to talk about it.
Exactly.
So it was a report that details the government's investigations into UFOs, or UAPs, which is unidentified aerial phenomena, to Congress. So I think we should just dive into it.
I totally agree.
Back in December 27th of 2020, legislation called the Consolidated Appropriations Act was passed. It had a bunch of stuff in it, and the most well-known part that you guys are all probably familiar with was the stimulus check. One of the stipulations within the bill, so usually bills have a lot of things attached to them that affect
Oh,
things.
they're trying to get a lot of things in there.
And don't worry, we're not going political. This is just history. No. This stipulation relates to us. So one of the stipulations within the bill was a requirement that the Director of National Intelligence and the Secretary of Defense create a report with, quote, detailed analyses or analysis of unidentified aerial phenomena data and intelligence, end quote, which is a fancy way of saying all information the government had on UFOs/UAPs and release it to Congress. The deadline was 180 days after passing of legislation, which turned out to be June 25th of 2021. So now that it's been released...
I know. I'm so curious. What did you
find?
We
were all so curious. Get ready to be... disappointed. So what did it say? I should preface by saying the report was only 9 pages long.
Yeah.
And we don't know how much that was redacted. But you and me wrote undergrad essays longer than that. And we usually did it the day before they were due.
I was going to say, not term papers, like little essays.
There's a very good chance this was written the day before it was meant to be reported. It should also be mentioned that one of the people present during the briefing, who was only reporting anonymously for their safety, stated that there was very little in the report that wasn't already public knowledge at this point. It may well have just been a summary of, hey, you know all that stuff you've heard about? We put it into one 9-page report.
Sweet.
They say it's a preliminary report, but I doubt we will see anything better or longer in the future.
Okay.
Here's what we do know was in the report. The bulk of it mentioned that there were 143 observed unidentified aerial phenomena that were documented specifically through the U.S. military. So these reports were U.S. military reports as opposed to some stranger on a farm saying something. These were military reports.
Right.
Most of these reports were from the last 16 years, so these are all recent. I think the most recent of which was 2004-ish. The sightings vary in their specificity, so they, some are vague and some are a lot more detailed.
Okay.
But 18 of these, so 18 of the 143, were particularly complex because they, quote, appeared to remain stationary in winds aloft, move against the wind, maneuver abruptly, or move at considerable speed without discernible means of propulsion, end quote. It attempted to explain away many of the sightings as being either foreign technology or atmospheric artifacts and phenomena.
Ball lightning.
Right here on my page I had in quotes, they never said ball lightning, but I'm pretty sure they meant ball lightning.
You know what they meant.
Oh man, orbs and ghosts and ball lightning and UFO. This is the future.
We're apparently not a fan of circles. So
glowing circles.
Glowing circles.
The report does say that the investigations are currently inconclusive. However, the most important thing to note, and this is the whole reason this is worth talking about, even if briefly, is that it states, although there has been no specific evidence that any of this is extraterrestrial in origin, there hasn't been any evidence to the contrary, and it cannot rule out the possibility of an extraterrestrial origin. We're going to talk about that in just a second.
Okay.
The report goes on to say how it is standardizing reporting procedures for UAPs and changing how it pursues tracking them in the field. you know, how they talk to pilots, how to deal with it, how the reporting goes, how we're detecting, like
just any kind of technology that they might encounter kind of scenario.
This report has mentioned that because of all this, they are actually, the investigative branch that's working on this is actually making standard procedures, and
that's cool.
So they're working on that, which I do appreciate. That could result in better stuff.
But they could also be helpful even if it is just like another country with their, you know, any kind of thing that they might encounter by accident or something.
Yeah, assuming it's a national security issue because it's foreign things, like them figuring this out. Like they said, getting this all together isn't because it's extraterrestrial in origin. That may be the case, but figuring out what this is actually important, because if we don't know what it is, what if someone has a technological advance over us?
Exactly.
That's a big deal.
And having a procedure really helps, because then that way we know how either a pilot or whoever is seeing this has a procedure, so it's predictable what they're going to do, and no matter what, our steps are the same, and however the thing is reactive could be helpful in the future.
Absolutely.
So that's interesting. Okay, yeah, I got this.
And I think this proves how I 100% am an American who was raised in the post-atomic bomb dropping era.
Oh, Lord.
And that is that the idea of another country being more advanced than us in terms of like military intelligence and espionage. I don't mean like they made a better cell phone. I mean like,
okay, I was like, Japan's already
there.
No,
I meant in terms of like national security issues. That terrifies me, and I actually am embarrassed that terrifies me. I'm like, what is up with my fragile little ego and sense of security blanket that apparently I'm bothered if another country might be doing advanced stuff? It's just, I think I'm just a product of my environment and time. But I do think that's interesting that I had that reaction. I'm like, wow, Chase, get over yourself. That's stupid.
Well, I mean, I kind of understand it, although I'm fairly confident that there's other things that, I mean, for sure Japan has technology. They're just kind of waving it in our face if you want to think of it that way. But I think it's fascinating how far they've come into certain things. Like,
no, absolutely.
Just whatever. And sometimes it's like the weirdest stuff, too. You're like, I don't know why this exists, but thank you. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like inventions or just different ways of doing things, and it's awesome. Now, with that said, places that have their space program up and running and putting a lot of money and investments in it, they're always going to have better technology in general for those kind of things.
And now that's a lot of countries.
That's a lot of countries. So I'm not surprised or upset. I'm just like, okay, well, that's just where they put their resources.
Well, I mean, at this point, our government doesn't even have our own ships going up there. We're using
privatized.
We've been sending stuff on the Russian Soyuz, and we've been using privatized SpaceX and everything like that.
So you shouldn't be concerned.
It's a new change, and it's a good, healthy change. But I mean, the fact that I acted weird, and most people, most countries out there grew up in a world, or people alive grew up in a world where the U.S. had nuclear bombs and landed on the moon and stealth bombers and all this crap, and they're fine. And for some reason, if some guy invented a really cool drone, I'm like, whoa, national security, and I turn into a weirdo. So I need to get over that.
It's really, really freaking me out.
There's a life lesson I've learned here, and that is calm down, Chase.
Calm down, Chase. Calm down. Have a drink.
I do think we can say that this was a bogus report.
Okay.
If we know one thing about any bureaucracy, it's that departments don't talk well to each other. I mean, even just if you need to get a new driver's license or change your social security number or anything like that, you have to go through all these departments independently, and it all fails and everything goes badly. Your health insurance is in a different name than like everything else, because when you change your name, even though the health insurance has your new name, like your login's in one name, but your card is in another. This is how bad this whole thing works.
Yeah.
So if we just assume that the government is just like that, and it is, how can we assume that they're communicating with each other? Governments are actually going to make this problem more compounded because we have national security as an issue.
Right.
So here are the two takeaways that I have from this report. Number one, in all likelihood, the U.S. government is so fractured due to its national security interests that there are quite a lot of powerful people who don't know the whole picture. Mm-hmm. This report proves that the minimal amount of effort was made to brief Congress on these unidentified sightings.
Oh, good.
And that either because the people creating the report don't know, or they don't want the information getting out. Pick one, it's one of them.
Right.
Number two, and this is the best one, going back to what I said earlier, is that we now have an official government report that admits it cannot rule out extraterrestrial origin. It may seem like a small thing to say, but it's actually a really big deal.
I was going to say, that's a big deal.
Someone online, they used the term paradigm shift, and I had to say it because I never get the opportunity to say that, because paradigm is one of my favorite words in the English language.
Paradigm. It is it's like quite the gem.
I have things like, I love hearing otra vez in Spanish. I love paradigm in English. One of my favorite other words is because we're talking about space, the Russian launch facility is the Cosmodrome. They're just words that just do something to me, where I'm just like, these are so cool. So, paradigm shift.
Okay.
So happy I got to say it.
That's lovely. I'm happy for you.
Yeah. So, the first step to anything is admission, and now we have this. I'm not saying they're extraterrestrial, but it's so amazing to now have the government say, we don't know, maybe, because ever since, like Roswell and all that stuff, the government would always say, weather balloon, plane crash, something, a cover-up, and they'd be like, it's not aliens, there's no aliens, it's not aliens.
It's like so aggressively not. And then they'll tell you fireworks, and you're like, okay, I mean, I get it, you're trying to cover it up, but that's just insulting. Like
Exactly. And so you kept hearing it wasn't aliens so much, you're like, okay, I don't know if I believe in aliens, but now I want to, because you guys are just assholes.
Yeah.
And so now we have them say, we don't know if it's a balloon. It doesn't look like a balloon. It doesn't act like a balloon. We're not saying it's aliens. Maybe it is aliens.
They're kind of like, we're with you on this one. Like, we don't know either.
And I like that. That's exciting because it changes the way the government... It shows that even the government, at least certain people in the government, are like, look, we don't know.
Or at least they're not telling us, you know?
Yeah, and so maybe some other people know more, but at this point we have an official report that has gone to Congress saying, maybe aliens.
But it's kind of one of those things. It's nice to be heard and be like, we've been saying these things for so many years, and then it's nice to hear that you don't know either. I don't know if this is comforting, but at least we're not being lied to, which is more insulting. Like I said, I'm all about being on the same boat. And I don't want someone like, leaving me in the ocean being like, no, you're on your own. I have no idea what you're talking about, kind of thing. So,
well, I don't think it is comforting. I can't remember the exact quote. I read it. It was on the Wikipedia page about the report, but it was along the lines of, we have no evidence leading us to extraterrestrial origin, but we have nothing disproving that, and we're going to follow the facts even if it leads us in that direction. It was something along those lines. But when I read that...
I guess I'm not saying comforting, but no, go ahead.
But when I read that, it tickled me.
It tickled.
To hear someone just be like, we have no reason to think it's aliens. And I said, but if evidence starts saying aliens, we're going to follow it that way. And I'm like, ooh, tell me more.
Yeah.
I was pretty excited.
That's kind of what I'm saying. It's just like exciting. It's like, okay, so... we're all here, right? Like, we see this.
Exactly.
And then that's, to me, I guess, kind of comforting.
So I do apologize that this end of episode encounter wasn't a story, but I felt since we had talked about this for so long, I needed to do an update. The next end of episode encounter, I swear, will be an exciting, probably abduction story, because those are the best.
Yay.
And I guarantee it'll happen. We just had to cover this because it's relevant. It's happening. This is a real world event that has to do with UFOs and little green men and
little funny things.
Yeah, and all the videos that we keep seeing. So that's what I got, and I think that brings this episode to a close. As a reminder, if you guys have any cool stories you want us to look at and maybe possibly talk about on the show, drop us a line at hotwpodcast@gmail.com, or social media, or text message if you know us personally, all that good stuff.
That's your little voice.
As always, we post episodes every Saturday. At what time Saturday might vary, but we post episodes.
It is always going to be a Saturday.
It's always on Saturday.
Yeah.
And you can find us on all standard podcast platforms, including Spotify. Trust me, we do mean Spotify.
Yeah. A lot of people seem to still not know that, but that's okay.
That seems to be one of our more popular venues, so get to it if you like it. We want to thank you all for joining us today. If you, like us, are imbibing away, cheers and have another. We know we will, to wipe our memory of Lily's story from today. And if you have to do the same, I apologize.
You're welcome.
But true hauntings come from horrible things, and I can't think of anything more horrible than that.
That's true, unfortunately, but yeah.
So that place might legitimately be haunted, which is why I don't want to go there.
Sure.
If you are listening to us on your way to work or being a productive member of society, doing yoga or something cool like that, good for you. Keep doing it, and drink later. I hope your day is awesome, and if you happen to be hungover while listening to this, don't worry, because the best cure for a hangover
is fear.
Bye.
See ya.